Welcome, Cowboys Nation, to the final episode of Building the Board presented by Hyper Ice. I'm Britt Johnson here with Dave Hellman. Dave, we are talking tight ends today. Dalton Schultz was franchise tagged by the Dallas Cowboys this season. What are your thoughts on that?
You know, this is one of the more interesting positions on this Cowboys roster, in my opinion, just because so much has changed that we didn't realize. And the big X factor here is Blake Jarwin, the guy the Cowboys originally committed to, gave him a 4-year extension, never really got to play much of it out. He was released because of a hip injury, and it kind of throws the situation into turmoil. I think that's a big part of why Dalton Schultz was franchise tagged, is because there's just not a whole lot behind him. They brought back Jeremy Sprinkle. They've got some young guys like Sean McCune and Ian Bunting, but behind Dalton Schultz, there's very little in the way of proven depth at this position, and that's why I think they will be looking for one pretty early on in this draft, honestly.
Yes, I mean, nobody really is ever probably going to compare to the great Jason Witten. That's probably going to be it. But I know you said we're going to be looking a little early. I don't think it's going to be a day one selection. So let's move to day 2 and 3. What are some of your favorite guys in this upcoming draft?
Yeah, it's an interesting class because there really isn't a first-round pick.
Right.
And that's fine, though, because the Cowboys have bigger fish to fry. We've talked about offensive line. We've talked about wide receiver. There's plenty of ways they can go. But starting really on day 2, this is a great tight end class as long as you're not looking for that Kyle Pitts or TJ Hawkinson. And so, again, starting as early as 56, whether you want to talk about Trey McBride out of Colorado State, Greg Dulcich, the UCLA tight end. We're going to get to Jalen Woods with Kyle Yeomans, who's one of my favorite prospects in the draft. The list goes on and on. Isaiah Likely out of Coastal Carolina. Like I said, starting in the 2nd round, probably all the way until the 5th, there are a variety of really talented tight ends, and honestly, these guys are monsters. Again, Jelani, 6'7" tight end. How about a guy like Charlie Kohler out of Iowa State? We know the Cowboys coaching staff went up to Ames for his pro day, a 6'7" tight end. This is a team that could use some size. They weren't very good at blocking last year. Dalton Schultz's specialty, not necessarily blocking. Same goes for Blake when he was here. I wonder if they're looking for a big guy that can help them out in the run game.
Well, a guy that could potentially get better at his run block, and he wasn't the greatest in college, is a guy out of Virginia that Kyle will be talking about now. Kyle?
Yeah, thanks, Britt. And that man is Jalen Woods, 6'7", 253 pounds. He's one of the more physically imposing figures in the entire NFL draft. And, by the way, he's a pass catcher. What does that bring? It brings a fantastic catch radius, and I'm going to talk about how he brings that to the table. First off, this is as an inline tight end, so he's coming right over the top. Not a great route runner, and I'm going to mention that again here in a couple of plays, but let's snap the ball. Just see the way that he's able to get off the line of scrimmage, has great burst off the line of scrimmage, even for a guy of his size, turns around, has good hands on kind of a poorly thrown ball. Yeah, it was in front of him, but it was down at his waist, was still able to adjust, and then he bounces off of a couple different tacklers. This linebacker had a great look over the top, and still unable to bring down 6'7" and 250 pounds, rumbling and tumbling in the middle of the hash marks. Now, as we move on, let's take a look at his down the field threat. He only had 3 receptions in his entire career. He was a transfer from Oklahoma State, finished up at Virginia. He was actually recruited as a quarterback, but he only had 3 different receptions of over 35 yards. This was one of them. This is how I feel like he can excel in the NFL, and it's been kind of a knock against his draft stock early on. This is him coming off the line of scrimmage, does not get a clean release here, but yet he's still able to work his way back behind and realizes awareness-wise, he has some room to work. Goes up with that big, tall catch radius. Made that look easy. I don't think, if we can roll back to where he catches that football here, look how much he elevates right at the point of attack, right up to pinpoint that football. Just look how high up off the ground he is here. He has a 37-inch vertical. Didn't have to use all of it here. That's 6'7". There's no way number 3's catching that ball if he's in the same position as Jelani Woods. There's no way that's possible. Instead, he catches it and rumbles into the end zone. Doesn't even get brought to the ground. He is that big and that imposing as a tight end. And what else does that bring? A red zone threat. This, once again, not the greatest route in the world. He's going to come up against this NC State corner, and then he's going to break right into the inside. Louisville is who they're playing in this one. But you go right up here, just 3 steps, and he breaks straight in toward the hash marks. and there's really nothing that corner can do. Not a great route, not a great break. However, there's nothing that cornerback can do to defend Jelani Woods. He's a red zone threat. He's somebody with a fantastic catch radius and somebody that a quarterback is going to love throwing the football to. Ran a great 4.6 40, has a 37-inch vertical, was a 10.9 broad jump, one of the most athletic tight ends, if not the most athletic tight end to ever test in the NFL. He's going to be a monster at the next level.
You know, the catching the ball, running with the ball, all great. I'm interested in the run blocking aspect of it because that is what Dalton Schultz actually lacks at. So think about what the Cowboys are having going into this draft. What are they going to be looking for in a tight end to draft that is going to complement a guy like Dalton Schultz?
You know, I think Dalton Schultz's own career is an interesting case study for this, in my opinion. Because, yeah, I don't think anybody would call him a mauler right now, but the gains are obvious. Like, the gains as an all-around player. And that's why I think the Cowboys need to do this early on as a guy, whether it's Jelani Woods. Most guys coming out of college these days, like the list goes on and on. The guys I mentioned before, Dulcich, Jeremy Ruckert out of Ohio State. You don't develop maulers in college football these days. It is such a wide open game, and that is why I think they need to draft a tight end this year, get him in a pro system, get him with a veteran like Dalton Schultz, and teach him how to do some of that stuff. Because somebody with that size, just talking about Woods because that's who you broke down, somebody with that size can do it, right?
Sure.
Like, you can be good enough as a blocker to get in the way and do your job effectively. It's just going to take time, and that's why I think you want to get the clock ticking on this right away.
I couldn't said it better myself because the modern-day collegiate football tight end is not built to be a next-level blocker. He's built to be a receiver for the most part. Look at Chigoziem Okonkwo from Maryland. He's a receiving tight end, put up fantastic numbers there in his time with the Terps. However, not really a great blocker. You could say the same thing even for guys like Jelani Woods and Jake Ferguson out of Wisconsin. They've got blocking ability. They have the traits to do so. Even Isaiah Likely out of Coastal Carolina, like you said earlier, he was a great receiving tight end, but as a blocker, there's a lot to be desired. You can really see that up and down the draft class, but the size, 6'4" plus. Teams love guys of that size and that athleticism, both for special teams, yes, for also on the tight end side of things, on the offensive side of things, and as a pass catcher, they can mold themselves into good blockers and to good contributors anywhere they put them in the field of play, and I think that's something that the NFL has to look forward to.
And again, we right now don't know Dalton's future.
Sure.
The franchise tag is a one-year deal. He and the team have both said they would like to work towards something long-term. You don't know that in April. And so I think you got to, not first round, maybe not even second round, but starting in the third, the fourth, which is where Dalton Schultz was picked 4 years ago, I think you look for a guy with those tools, knowing that you don't need a starter right now, but you can develop this guy in case Dalton's not here in the future.
Potential is what I'm seeing. We're looking for somebody with potential.
Isn't that what the draft's all about?
Absolutely.
All that potential, new talent coming into the NFL.
Well, speaking of the draft, it starts tomorrow, you guys. This is our very last episode here, but we are not done with coverage yet. We are going to have tons of draft coverage for you guys throughout the weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Hopefully we have some good news with some amazing picks for the Dallas Cowboys. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Kyle Yeomans, Dave Hellman, I'm Britt Johnson. We will see you guys for draft coverage starting tomorrow.